Hello everybody, my name is Daniel, and this is the second greatest MCU ranking ever. Number 22, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. For me, disappointments hurt worse than just a bad movie, so from the high that was Guardians 1, and you'll see that reflected in the ranking, this one just, I thought, indulged in the worst instincts of the MCU. Make it bigger, louder, dumber. Number 21, Iron Man 3. So picture this. You got out of the Avengers a couple months ago, and you saw arguably one of the best comic book movies of all time. And you see the trailer for Iron Man 3, and there's explosions, and Tony's home is being destroyed, he might die, he might give up the suit forever, there's this intimidating guy named the Mandarin, you're like, ooh, where is this going?
My name's Trevor.
The twist kind of works. They reason that terrorism has a face that's put upon it, a sort of figurehead to keep people distracted from the real enemy. Okay, cool idea. And then they just put a bunch of random dudes in glowy CGI and then have a bunch of suits fly around and go pew 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 bang bang bang. Shane Black just needs to stick to making his own movies because when he tries to take other properties and mold them in his universe, it just doesn't work out. Number 20, Iron Man 2. I just don't think I remember it. Number 19, The Incredible Hulk. Some people like to use the metaphor black sheep, but I prefer to think of The Incredible Hulk as a poorly made crash test dummy. It's Marvel putting everything they think they can put in this MCU together, running it through the ringer, and seeing where the head flies out of the windshield and the arms torn apart. But, the legs are pretty good, so I guess we'll just stick with that. I think Norton is fine for that sort of grittier sci-fi take. If you were going to go in that direction, I think Edward Norton would have been a nicer choice. But, yeah, overall, this movie's just a mess. Number 18, Ant-Man. I don't remember laughing a lot in this movie. I remember finding Michael Peña's bit incredibly annoying. I sort of remember the train fight. It just seems like the most paint-by-numbers the MCU's ever done. And for that, I just don't care. Number 17, Avengers Age of Ultron. Did you ever make jigsaw puzzles? And you get to the point where you got a piece in your hand, and you know it should fit in the hole that you're looking at, but it doesn't quite fit, but you can't find any other place for it to fit, so you're trying to just pound it in, and maybe it'll make a warped version of the image that you're supposed to make, but it just doesn't. That's kind of what this movie feels like for me. Putting a bunch of tie-ins to future movies, and Joss Whedon just went out of left field with the Black Widow character. I knew in the back of my head that this movie was going to be weird after hearing the Pinocchio song in the trailer. However, the Hulkbuster fight I saw on TV the other day, still badass. The opening action sequence, badass. Hawkeye is given some of the best characterization of his MCU career. I really like Scarlet Witch. And Andy Serkis is always a hoot, so it's not a terrible film in any way. Number 16, Spider-Man Homecoming. With Tobey Maguire, it was very much the nerd Peter Parker works, Spider-Man doesn't work. With Andrew Garfield, the Spider-Man works, the nerd part never worked. With Tom Holland, I've realized over a while that my disappointment with this is he's too childish. There's a fine line, and I understand why they aged him younger, and they aged the whole story younger, made it a little more lighthearted to be like an 80s movie, but these kids don't feel like those kids from The Breakfast Club. This kid feels like Nickelodeon's version of a high school kid. I never liked the Iron Man tie-in, just because it kind of neutered Peter Parker's intelligence. You give him this crazy suit that has all the upgrades that we see in the comics, but there's something cool about seeing Peter Parker come up with those. Number 15, Thor: The Dark World. I heard a podcast. I think it's Show Me the Meaning by Wisecracked, and they described Thor as a cyclical character. He's a guy whose lesson he constantly has to learn, because he'll learn it and things go good for him, and then he'll deviate from that lesson and things go bad. So the entirety of Thor has always been about learning how to be a responsible leader, how to be a good king, how to be a good guy, get rid of his arrogance, etc. And in this one, I think it's Thor trying to figure out, how can I be this king of Asgard, a really good leader, while also, trying to stick to the woman that he loves. Where in Thor, you saw the spectacle, the Kenneth Branagh Shakespearean spectacle. In this one, you saw Asgard as more of a living, breathing, functioning city. I like that stuff. I like the last act, where we're playing with portals and just bouncing around everywhere. That stuff's fun. Where this movie totally fails is the villain. I just don't think that's integrated well. Thor: The Dark World was kind of meh when it came out, and now I'm kind of leaning toward it being good. Number 14, Captain America: Civil War. These versus movies, Batman v Superman and Civil War, hinge on one question. Why are they fighting? Do we allow our body to have oversight, or are we still the best people to decide how, when, and why? Basically the particulars of saving people. Now, the specific battle between Tony's team and Cap's team, based on this mistaken identity of Bucky, I think just relies on them being reckless. I really think if you would have taken some time just to really investigate the stuff, you'd realize, oh wait, Bucky's being impersonated. The airport battle, I appreciate. I think somebody described this as them playing with their toys when they were a kid. And it totally makes sense for me. Because when you're playing with your toys as a kid, you're in it for the spectacle. You're in it for the most shallow reasons possible, which is just watching all these superhero powers go at it. And on that level, it's cool. But as a story, that has no stakes. Because these people aren't trying to kill each other. These people aren't really trying to hurt each other. They're just trying to knock each other out. It kind of seems more like a boxing match to see who falls first. And on that level, I just couldn't linger on the movie. Like, what's going to happen if Tony's team wins the airport battle? Nothing. They all just get captured and go to prison. And what happens when Cap's team wins? They get to go on an airplane. Woo. Like, I don't like the stakes of that. And I know this movie tried to bill it as just this big ideological warring battle. But the story underneath that ideological warring battle is just kind of lame. We have number 13, Avengers Infinity War. I'm actually not the biggest fan of the Wakanda battle, but I'm a bigger fan of the Titan battle. I like seeing superhero powers working in conjunction. I like the combo moves. That stuff is a lot of fun. And I realized why I don't think Infinity War is the greatest thing in the world boils down to one thing, which is Thanos. Thanos does not value life. As much as the movie tries to convince you, oh, this is the greater good, you cut out half of life in the universe and everybody has double the resources. He doesn't care about that. He cares about being worshipped as this pseudo-god. That's why the Black Order is called Thanos' children, and he calls everybody, my child. I know what is best. I am the one who's willing to make the hardest sacrifices. It's all about him. I understand that part of his psychology, if that's what you're going for. But if this is Thanos' movie and Thanos' point of view, I really want to see the side of his psychology that really genuinely believes that, or at least has deluded himself into believing that this is the greater good. I just didn't get that in this movie, and I thought there was too much whiz-bang in order for that character to really come out and be sold in that way. Whenever that ending happened, and I heard the kid next to me start crying, that refix the context of this. This is a movie that, for people who have grown up on these characters, to feel that Empire Strikes Back kind of ending was a game changer for them. I don't think they've really experienced that level of, hard endings with their characters. Empire Strikes Back, if you grew up on that, that's your generation, but these are specifically theirs. And this is a lesson that they've learned in their time, in their way. So I appreciate the movie for that. Number 12. Oh my god, you guys are really gonna hate me for this. Captain Marvel. I'm a big fan of the weirdos in the MCU. Despite my placement of Incredible Hulk, I actually really respect that movie. You're gonna see Thor later on. I really like that movie. And Captain Marvel, I think, is just this weirdo of a film crafted by a bunch of people that is part, like, 90s girl power. It's an origin story. It's a thematic primer to what Avengers Endgame is going to be, or what the Avengers as a concept is in general. It's a way to look at different characters in the MCU through a different light, different characterization, and it's also owes a lot to like this old Roddenberry Star Trek and weird Flash Gordon vibes, just this neon cosmic smorgasbord. But there's also a scene that's shot with like this handheld that's really paced like a Sundance indie drama, and there's just so much in this movie that I can't help but respect it. It's so weird. And yet, I think at its core, it has this understanding of an origin story, not necessarily detailing the A, B, and C of someone's life, but really figuring out who this person is by what they stand for. And despite her not knowing everything, there's still a part of your personality that rings through no matter what. So you do get a glimpses of who Carol Danvers is as a person through just the adventure of the movie and the way she reacts to people. She's a person who doesn't take any crap and actually enjoys calling people out on it. And I liked seeing those like little subtle details being brought out. I think Brie Larson pulled so much out of that weirdo character that made it work. And it only takes a really smart actress to figure that out. So, yeah, Captain Marvel. It's better than Infinity War. They should put that on the DVD. Number 11, Thor. Arguably, Thor gives us the most important line, or the most important scene in the MCU. It's when he's talking with Jane, played by Natalie Portman, and he's discussing that where he comes from, magic and science are one and the same. If audiences weren't going to go for this idea that magic and science are really just like the same thing except you explain it two different ways, then the sort of real the sort of more science end of the science fiction that Iron Man and Incredible Hulk created aren't going to gel anywhere near Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or Doctor Strange. Hell, even something like the regular Avengers I don't think is going to be taken quite as seriously if you don't buy that concept. Number 10, Ant-Man and the Wasp. From completely forgettable to my number 10 spot. And what's funny is that Ant-Man and the Wasp doesn't really deviate from what Ant-Man was doing. I think I described it in my review with the BS review as it's just better Ant-Man. It's Ant-Man done better, more imaginatively. It's funnier. The action's a lot better. And I want to say that most of this is because Peyton Reed, the director, had this project from the get-go. It wasn't inherited to him from Edgar Wright. And I think with his oversight over all of it, the overall package was better crafted, and I had a better sense of what the movie was. For the most part, everybody here is just doing better. Even Michael Pena, whose bit I didn't really like in the first one, in this one, they bring it back in such a clever way that I was won over by it, and it was one of the biggest laughs of my movies. So I think this is an example that you could take the same kind of idea for a movie and just, it only really matters on how you do it. Number 9, Doctor Strange. I think Doctor Strange at his core is a guy that wants to do the best for everybody. Doesn't matter what it is, he just will immerse himself in the study that he's trying to do, is to be the best at it, not to puff up his own ego, but to be the best for other people. And when he falls, sort of like a cyclical character with Thor, except I don't think we've explored that with Strange yet, when he's doing good at this selflessness, he succeeds. When he's doing bad, he suffers. I saw it in 3D, actual IMAX, and that blew my mind. Whenever he gets hit by the Ancient One through all those dimensions, seeing that on a massive screen, seeing texture in the screen, it was just an experience that I don't really think I've had visually with the MCU since. Number 8, Captain America, the First Avenger. I think the ideal of what every hero in the MCU wants to be is Captain America. You want to be that good. And in this movie, I found that with characters that are so morally good, they get written kind of corny, and they get written with sort of a shallow brush. But with Chris Evans, you understand there's this sacrificial element to his nature. There's also this this struggle, this guy that has been powerless at some point, and now he has all the power that he can muster, and he's still trying to maintain that moral center. Something that the MCU has been struggling for a while. Not struggling, I would say, reckoning with. Number 7, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I think it's the most balanced in the MCU, whether it be themes, genre, and the comic book nature of it. There really isn't any movie like Winter Soldier in the MCU. Even Civil War, directed by the same guys, I think owes more to that pulpier side of comic book, big issue fights than this one, which seems like it owes more to a political thriller. And the themes are still there, but you still got the comic booky action, and you got the good characters. It really just is an extremely well-packaged film. Number 6, Iron Man. That scene where he first flies as Iron Man is one of those moments in film history that I thought, wow, like, flight always gets me in movies. It's been my favorite superpower forever, and just to be Iron Man in that moment, and the way the film is shot with that sort of close-up on Downey's face as you see all the interface of his Iron Man suit, and he's flying, and he's just swooping all over the city. That's one of those moments where film just kind of washed me over, and I really felt like I wanted to live in it. Number 5, Black Panther. Similar to Iron Man, it is one that I do get swept up in. But with this one, I thought the script was so tight, and I thought the stuff they were saying about sort of the oppression of minorities and the responsible use of power, yet again, the sort of international element to the politics that were going out. There's also this son who is grieving his father and trying to figure out his place in the world, his responsibilities to his people versus his family versus the world. There's so much that's jam-packed in here, and none of it feels like it's jam-packed. It all feels elegant and smooth and sleek and sharp. That car chase is just mind-blowing. It's the same kind of thing as like Iron Man flying around. Like, I want to be sitting inside this holographic car, which the way that had been shot, I've never really seen that before, and it's really cool. You're just driving around. Oh, man. The more I think about it, the more I just get enraptured in it like a child. And this is a movie that works best on all levels. It can be as shallow as like a child watching this Saturday morning cartoon, and it can be as adult as you thinking about the politics and thinking about where we are as Americans and as members of an international society. Number 4, The Avengers. Plainly put, this is one of the most fun experiences I've ever had. You know, this is a movie that arguably kind of dropped like a bomb, and when you're in the theater, you see all these moments. It really is a movie made up of, like, you remember the part when Thor and the Hulk were standing there after fighting, and Hulk, like, punches him in the head? Do you remember the puny god scene? Do you remember, I have an army, we have a Hulk? Do you remember the shawarma post-credit scene at the end? Do you remember, that's my secret, Cap, I'm always angry? Do you remember the bloody baseball card? Do you remember that man's playing Galaga? That first third can be kind of a slog to get through, but it's one of those where, like, when you get to that battle in New York, oh man, that's movie making, man. That is something that I know everybody likes the airport battle. I know everybody likes the battle at Wakanda, but that Battle of New York, man, to see the scope of it, even if it's just a city, it seems so big, and it seems like, how are these people gonna win? And you get to see, like, how each Avenger works as a unit in the group, and that stuff, man, just, it's the Avengers. It's that movie. When we talk about the 2010s, that is going to be the arguably the beginningest it's the Avengers, man. Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. I remember just being struck by that scene at the bar whenever Rocket is sobbing about how he's a freak and how he's about to get into this drunken fight. And I don't remember seeing anything quite as naked and quite as ugly in the MCU, but ugly with a purpose. You know, you do get to see how really tragic and how painful all these characters' pasts have been, but it doesn't really seem like that hinders them completely from being good people at heart. Something about these characters working through their pain to achieve a grander purpose is something that really spoke to me, and the fact that it was wrapped up in all this space and comedy and fun was just kind of like a cherry. Or maybe it was like the bigger sugar layers of this awesome jawbreaker. Number 2, Avengers Endgame. Endgame just works as a 3-hour piece with no wasted minutes. There's always a moment that's developing plot, character, themes, action, like all of that is so meticulously paced and well executed that even if you were the grandma sitting next to me who had never seen Infinity War, she got it. The character moments that, 1, people have been waiting for forever, and 2, you just see the power and the scope and the imagination behind all of it. To see that work, and work so damn well, is a feat that that one, we're going to return to history here, that is for the record books. Number 1! Thor Ragnarok. Comic book, sci-fi, action at its most fun, most enrapturing, most funny, and there's still some thematic, intelligent, emotional heft to it. The way this movie deals with colonialism, this idea of the sins of the father, this idea of Thor really learning how to be a leader outside of beating the bad guy up at the end of the day. Being a leader is about caring for your people. And I love the way this movie turns that third act on its head while owing so much to the big third acts of all time. When I tell you that Thor riding in to the Immigrant Song is one of the best needle drops of the 21st century, that is no exaggeration. That whenever that happened, it took all in my gut just not to scream, yeah! So that's it. The second greatest MCU ranking of all time. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, second? Who's the best? That would be my buddy Jared Buckendall. If you've not seen that video, I highly, highly recommend you check that out. It's a lot shorter than this one. So give him a like and a share and a subscribe and let him know that Daniel sent ya. But if you enjoyed this, go ahead, like this video too, subscribe to the channel for more videos, and let me know your MCU rankings. If you have your own video for your MCU rankings, link that video in the description too, so I can watch your stuff and we can kind of share in the view boosting, I guess. But until next time, thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.